Have you recently received stock options, or do you have a bunch of stock options that have been sitting around and you're just not sure how to make the best decisions? Well, today we're going to talk through three key ways that you can work on maximizing your stock option strategies. And the first you have to deal with is taxation, and that's one of Will's favorite subjects here, right?
Yeah, tax seems to always be at the center of things. So when we're talking about stock options, what we're going to cover today, there are two basic types of options. There's the incentive stock options and non-qualified stock options. And the key difference between those two is really how they're taxed. Non-qualified stock options get taxed when you exercise them. So the bargain element within the option gets taxed and added to your W-2 when you exercise. Whereas incentive stock options, it's a little bit different. You still get taxed when you exercise, but only for AMT purposes. If you hold the shares after you exercise for 12 months, then they can be qualify for long-term capital gains treatment, which is preferential to, especially at the higher end of the tax brackets.
But if the stock price falls and you have what is known as phantom income, right, that's where it can get a little more complex, and you want to check out maybe in the description below, we have a longer podcast episode and some show notes on that of how to think through that and understand the terminology around that. Because you have strike prices, you have holding periods that you want to be aware of and understand how these dates influence your decisions around when to exercise or when to sell, and the taxation on that. And then the other component, you have to think about how are these stock options affecting your overall net worth, right?
Right, and you touched on that with the risk of hanging on to a stock. Individual stocks can be volatile, especially depending on what type of company the shares are owned. So when you look at your net worth, you have to factor in what we call this concentrated position of these exercised options, or even if they're not exercised, they potentially could be considered part of your risk. And so how do you manage through that? How do you reduce that risk? What are some strategies? We mentioned tax, there's cash flows and lots of different factors that need to be considered.
Mm-hmm. And is there diversification that's needed, right? That's a question you have to consider, because as you're dealing with leverage with stock options, and I know that's a fancy term, but what that means basically is it could be worthless if it's below the strike price, but it could be worth a lot once it starts to rise above that and it exponentially grows. It could grow to a percentage, 20, 25, 30, 40, even more percent of your overall portfolio. And then you might be feeling a little more risk management problems there in terms of what if it falls, what could it cause me to not be able to do? So that really, I guess, blends into our third key of a decision making that you're thinking about here. If you did exercise and sell, what does this make possible?
Right. One of the things that we help clients decide are the goals I have, how can I reach those? And whether it be a child's education or maybe a vacation home or new car, whatever it is, in the form of these options, they can absolutely be a tool to achieve those goals. So again, you have to look at tax, you have to consider cash flow issues and all those things, but they can most certainly be a vehicle to help you achieve your life goals.
And that's the beauty of financial planning, because you can look at different scenarios. You can consider different tax years. You can understand how much of your net worth this stock option might have grown to. All these things are components, but it takes time to analyze. So you can have all the information to make the best decisions, and that's what we do every day here. And we provide a lot of education for you and articles that we have on our website and a lot of other videos here. Also, our podcast you can check out in the show description below. You can also subscribe if you don't want to miss the next episode. And as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.